Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna Gul from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're back with the course Public Relations and Advertising, bearing the code GMC 432, as well as the course Fundamentals of Public Relations, bearing the code GMC 331. It's our 17th lecture today, and the topic is communication problems. Sometimes it so happens that undesirable communication situations arise. These can range from no one showing up to a press release to 100 people protesting your effort at the same press release. Like, it can be any of these situations. No matter what the issue is, dealing with communication crisis takes preparedness. In today's lecture, we'll discuss different types of communication problems, how to identify them, and how to handle them in the best interests of one's own organization or initiative. So what we'll be discussing today is what is communication, what do communication problems look like, how to deal with such problems, and handling crisis in communication. Starting with the first one, what is communication? We all know what communication is. Like, when we talk about communication, we're mainly referring to what is known as the process of transmitting ideas and information about your initiative throughout the community. I'm talking about initiative because considering public relations. Although doing this may involve looking at communication within your organization, the communication we are currently concerned with here is between you and the community, you being the public relations officer or the PR trainee. This might be direct information like flyers or ads that go straight from you to the community with no one else in between, or indirect information that goes through someone else like newspaper stories. But the fact is that communication is not one-sided. By that I mean, you can blanket the community with the information, but if that information isn't understood, or it's not understood in the way you meant it to be, you might not as well have bothered. A good communicator has to empathize with the audience and try to understand what they will think and how they will feel about what they hear or see. So we need to understand the nature of communication. Secondly, communication involves more than words. It can include body language and tone of voice, as well as the attitude and general tone that are projected in speech, writing, or actions. Therefore, an organization has to make sure that anyone or anything that represents it projects in every way a respectful and welcoming style that includes everyone in the community. Thirdly, different groups often communicate using different styles and assumptions. People's gender, racial and cultural background, educational experience, perceptions of who has power, all such things influence how they receive and interpret communication. It's absolutely necessary to know your audience and think carefully about how they look at what your organization presents. To communicate effectively, organizations have to take all of these ideas into account. This is why we discussed communication here, because with respect to public relations, we need to be very careful about what communication is and how knowing all these things can make a big difference. If we care for things in advance, things are going to be quite easier. Now let's look into what do communication problems look like. Well, there are many different kinds of problems that can crop up when you're trying to let the community or a particular group know who you are, what you are doing, and why they should care. Some problems have to do with your presentation of your message, and others are dependent on other people's perceptions of what you are doing and what you stand for. Because these issues are different, they call for different kinds of resolutions. We'll now discuss some of the problems you might face in trying to let the community know about you, followed by a discussion of some ways to deal with such problems. So first I'll come up with the problems. I'll discuss what kind of problems you might be able to face, and with each problem I'll come up with certain ideas for solutions that you can solve those issues. Starting with problem number 1. Your message isn't reaching your target population. For some reason, like whatever the problem is, for some reason the people you're trying to reach aren't hearing about you and what you have to tell them. So you are unable to reach your target population. This is a problem. How can we solve that problem? Well, if you examine your language, your assumptions about the people you're trying to reach, and your assumptions about how and where they can be reached, you're probably well on your way to solving the problem. So you need to know the kind of language you are using. What do you assume about the people? For example, how they can be reached, that is which channels, and where they can be reached, that is once again which channels, which locality, what timings. Then you are on the road to problem solving. Checking with members of the group you're aiming at about what's likely to work, and then using it seems obvious. But if it hasn't been done beforehand, it's worth mentioning. So all you need to do is, when you're trying to reach a certain audience, it's better to have some of those people on your panel, for example, to get ideas how those people can be reached, what works for them. They can give you excellent insights about the type of language or the timings or the way things are presented. Then, are you using the language that most people in your target population actually speak or prefer to speak? If so, is your language too educated for them to understand or respond to? Are you assuming knowledge of, for example, written English that most people in your target population simply don't have? Are you using ways of getting the word out that people are likely to pay attention to? What are the channels of communication that people you are trying to reach use? What do they hear or read or watch? Whom do they listen to? Where are they likely to be found? These are so many questions that if you start paying attention to these questions, you will settle this problem of not being able to reach your target audience. So it's all about just asking the right questions and sorting your things out. Now let's move towards another problem. The second problem, people don't understand or misunderstand your message. Either folks have no idea what you're trying to say, or worse, they think you're saying something other than what you think you are saying. This could include members of the target population not understanding that your message is meant for them, or it could lead to the next problem if they misunderstand in a particular way. How do we solve that problem? It's basically you've somehow missed the mark, what you are doing wrong, or how you can fix it. Once again, you need to examine your language and assumptions. Are you using the wrong language or assuming that your audience has some knowledge that it really doesn't? Find out what people think you are saying. It may be that a single word or phrase is changing or confusing your message for most people. If you can spot it and change it, your problem may be solved. Examine the message itself. Do you understand clearly what it is you want to say? If not, you need to hash it out so that you can state it in terms anyone can understand. Restate the message more clearly and test out the new version with people who represent your audience to make sure they understand what you intend. If appropriate, apologize for any misunderstanding and restate your real message strongly. Now moving towards the third problem. People take issue or disagree with your message and find it offensive in some way. The differences might be political or philosophical, or you might have used some language that people believe is offensive or threatening. In any case, you now have antagonists that out there who are upset with you. So you're in trouble. How to sort that out? Well, disagreement can take a number of forms, and it's important to know exactly what you are dealing with. Are opponents' issues based on political or philosophical differences about your basic premise? Do they think you are just dead wrong? Or are they based on the wording or presentation of your message? Do opponents feel your message demeans or attacks a particular group or misstates an issue? Can you change the message to respond to these concerns? So actually you need to find out why there is disagreement. Unless you know that, you are unable to settle this thing. Try to establish communication with those who disagree with you. Can you respond to their concerns without compromising your goals or principles? What if any are your points of agreement? Can you work together in some ways? Are you willing to discuss their issues over time? So asking these questions is going to help you a lot. Are you at least partially in the wrong? Are the opponents right in any way of their objections? Is a public or private apology or retraction in order? So you need to ask these questions. Even, for example, you need to ask yourself, what are the consequences of continued disagreement? Can you agree to disagree in a civil way? And would that be okay for your organization? If your differences are not resolvable, make sure that your point of view is always stated clearly and correctly. Often it is helpful to have it stated by people with status or credibility in the community who support your group. This is very, very important. You need to continue to treat your opponents with respect, but always do your homework so that side issues can't be used as an excuse for negating your message. Make sure that anything stated as fact by either side is accurate. If all else fails, be prepared to play hardball by political backing, staging demonstrations, etc. If your opponents won't move, you need to be strong. But finally, you need to redouble your efforts to send your message to those you want to reach, because persistence is the key. So if you remain persistent, things are going to work out for you, but you need to take all that pressure first. The fourth problem: people dislike or distrust your organization and therefore take issue with what they think your message is, even if they haven't actually heard the message itself. Yeah, again, your differences may be political, philosophical, or otherwise, but whatever the reason, these people know that you are the enemy. So you have to sort it out. How would you deal with that? How you deal with this kind of problem depends upon why the problem exists. Once again, if the people merely misunderstand what your group does or stand for, then it's purely a communication issue and can be handled as such. If a group feels attacked by what you are saying and trying to do, that's a different kind of issue. If you are seen as representing a religious, political, or social value system which a particular group of people finds threatening or hateful, that presents a whole new set of difficulties. A group may have and give out an inaccurate version of your message because they mistakenly think that they know what you think, or they may be representing you intentionally. So you need to try to allay fears, but don't misrepresent your ideas. It may be that those whom see you as representing something they distrust or fear or hate. They're right. If they are, the best you can do may be to try to keep talking and look for common ground. Once again, it's very important to talk to those who are against you, who mistrust you, who dislike you. Unless you talk, you would not know where the problem is. Like, you need to sort out the roots of the problem. Once you reach the roots, then you can work it out. Then you can make things happen. And you can actually uproot the differences. So it's very good to look for common ground. If your message or your organization is being misrepresented, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it is absolutely necessary that you respond immediately. You need to find the best medium in which to correct false information or impressions. Be the first one, be there, fill out the vacuum so that any misinformation does not make way. It could be the press or other mass media, a public forum, word of mouth, the internet. It all depends on whom you're trying to reach and what the nature of the community is. However, it's important to avoid attacking or bad-mouthing the other side. Like, treat everyone respectfully, tell the truth, and answer questions. If there is a moral high ground, you want to be seen as occupying it. It's once again very, very important that people see you as a morally upright organization. This is very, very important. If your opposition chooses to do the same, there's that much more chance of some resolution. Obviously, if they are also on a morally high ground, you people are gonna work it out well. Do everything you can to make your message stronger and more widely available than that of your opposition, and this will sort things out for you. This is going to make things easier for you then. The fifth problem, you're misrepresented. Your message has been misrepresented in the media. Every organization has had this experience at least once. It could be the result of your error, a reporter's error, or a reporter's inexperience, or even outright ill will on the part of the reporter or her employer. You have to deal with the fallout no matter why it happened. So how do you deal with that? As I said earlier, this happens a lot. There are really two strategies here. First, try to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. And second, address it if it happens, despite your efforts to prevent it. Successful prevention entails establishing a close relationship with the media, and particularly with finding a sympathetic person at each outlet, newspaper, radio, or TV station, to deal with directly. You can head off errors by providing key points and descriptions, especially those that they have gotten wrong in the past, to reporters and others. Even though they'll probably rewrite whatever you give them, they'll be more likely to get it right. Remembering to call your contacts when interesting stories are available will always be remembered in turn and will get you both coverage and support when you need them. It's also helpful to try to become an expert to whom the media turn when they are trying to understand or report on the issue your organization is concerned with. And be available no matter how much trouble it is when media people call. This is so very important. There's so many organizations who actually avoid facing the media, avoid answering whenever they are struck with any crisis, and this is what they do very, very wrong. Be available to the media so that you do not let conspiracy theories take place. You do not let rumors come in. At least whatever is said by you. So you'll be more honest towards your organization, towards your initiative. You'll be more clear about the situation than anybody giving in any kinds of details. So you need to be available no matter how much trouble it is when media people call, be it like in a crisis, be it different odd hours, whatever it is. You have to be there because you need them. So if in spite of your efforts you still get misrepresented, take steps to correct the error right away. In the case of a simple error, a letter to the editor or a press release may do the trick. If the misrepresentation was intentional, you may have to find a different avenue of communication to get the correction out. So it all depends on what you are facing. According to that, you have to deal with your issue. So you remember finally that problems and crisis if they are handled properly and are not end of the world. You have to expect that these things will happen occasionally and that you need to have plans to address them. If when people think of your organization, they remember a crisis in which you acted well rather than blame casting, your chances of success are greatly increased. Good preparation and a cool head can make the scale tip much further to the opportunity side. That's all for today. Thank you.